Please do have a seat. I'm under instructions not to tread on David's guitar. I will do my best. Last week I said that we would ask someone about their experience of trying to talk about some of these things beyond church circles. Luke is the someone tonight. For those who don't know you, give them a bit about yourself.
Good evening. My name's Luke. I normally go to the morning service, so it's nice to meet quite a few of you for the first time. I am yet another doctor, and I've taken time out along the way to tread into different disciplines. So I sort of messed around and got distracted along the way of medical specialising.
That's a humble way of him saying he's done a PhD in medical ethics. Carry on.
So I have been quite fortunate now to have an interesting combination of clinical work and academic work and teaching work, and now teach medical ethics to medical students.
Is there anything to life apart from work for you?
I used to have hobbies, but then 2 kids came along, and now I just occasionally read books in the evening, but nothing particularly exciting.
Yeah, so married to Ash. Oh no, I've forgotten the children's names.
Sorry, I should have said that earlier on. She'll probably watch this online as well.
Hello, darling.
Yes, I'm married to Ash, and her parents, Guy and Karen, are also members of this church. They're from Zimbabwe, and we have 2 boys, Joshua and Jason.
Great. From time to time, you and I have chewed over how best to respond when things like sexuality and gender and so on come up with people who are really on a different planet from the Bible. Give us a bit of your experience and wisdom on that.
Where to start, really? I think one thing I've had to learn is to admit that just as the church is not all good, so the world is not all bad. And that the biblical paradigm, the biblical framework of thinking about our culture and the world around us is sort of the Tower of Babel. Would be a nice picture in Genesis 11, where there's confusion going on because of mankind's pride. And so the world around us isn't all wrong, but it is all confused. And what that means then in practice is that there's always somewhere we can start with people, whether that's with individual people in front of us or whether that's with individual disciplines. It can be tempting, I've certainly been tempted to view certain areas of work and certain areas of study as goodies and baddies, some heroes and some villains. And we, as Christians, we can often like the professions, but be a bit suspicious of certain isms. If I give some examples, liberalism, relativism, postmodernism, feminism, these are all isms that it's very rare to hear positive things about in church circles, and so it can be difficult to look for that common ground that we have with people and with disciplines. And that's something that I have found very difficult, but also very fruitful in trying to be persuasive in interacting with people, particularly about these very awkward and contested, controversial, emotionally provocative topics.
So there's things you can affirm. There are shared desires. I know one thing that Ed Shaw says, is to ask people, what do you want in this area of life? Mm-hmm. Because we find, none of us wants damage, for example. We all want these areas to do us good. Mm-hmm. A few other things occur to me. This is unscripted, by the way. He doesn't know what's coming. Are there times when you think the best thing to do is to say nothing? And how do you know?
Again, something I've had to evolve and develop and realize over time. I feel like I used to be the kind of guy that would always want to speak at every possible opportunity for airtime, partly because I was aware that we worship a talking God who reveals himself, and wants us to reveal him through words. But we also serve a God who reveals himself over time. The Bible wasn't downloaded by USB all at once. And there's a proverb in Proverbs 26 which says, like one who grabs a passing dog by the ears is someone who rushes into a quarrel, not his own. You know, it's not going to go well for you, and it might bite our face off, so to speak. So, and clearly we are all, as Christians, following a Christ who at times said nothing and was called in front of the high priest at the end of this Matthew's gospel, was called in front of the high priest and the council, and when asked, what's all this about you smashing the temple and rebuilding it again? And he says, nothing. And then he's called in front of Pilate, and what's all this about these claims that the powerful Jews are making against you? And what a platform. Like, imagine the influence that we might think, what an influence. Imagine if you converted Pilate. But Jesus' response was nothing. That was the wisest move at that time. So I guess that's just an example that there are times when it's wisest to say nothing, which doesn't mean that we're unfaithful or necessarily cowardly. It might simply be the shrewd move, and even the Christ-like move, if we are in a certain situation which is perhaps very mocking, very trivial, or where we think that precious truth that God has shown us might be trampled on, then it might be wisest to hold back. Also, if I'm honest, there are times when I've got so cross that I've had to hold back, acknowledging my limits, that might not always be constructive. So sometimes it's the situation, sometimes it's the people, sometimes it's myself.
Yeah.
That means I should hold back.
Yeah. One last thing. So that's on, is it wise to sometimes say nothing? In the situations where we're thinking something, I think we often put a wrong pressure on ourselves by aiming to give a potted version of that sermon that I've just heard, or aiming to win an argument. What do you think we're aiming to do when a conversational opportunity comes up?
I guess it's a cliche, isn't it, to say win the person, not just the argument. But there's clearly some truth in that our purpose, if you like, or our mission is not simply to proclaim true information, but to embody Christ's wisdom. And because the world is fallen, but not all bad by God's common grace, he still blesses his creation. And so there's always common ground to start with. And so I guess a bigger aim is being persuasive, not merely broadcasting true information, but being persuasive as we present Christ explicitly or implicitly.
Great, thank you. I think we shouldn't go on now, but Luke, along with Fee Jameson and Carolyn Hosey, is going to join me afterwards for question and discussion time, I've called it, because we did have a discussion. There were sort of 20 or so of us through last time. I didn't know how big or small it would be, but that's it. That's a good size if you want to come through and join us. People asked questions just straight out, but we have a Slido thing as well if you prefer to ask a question to Slido anonymously. So if you'd like to join us to just sort of talk more about these things, just throw around ideas about any of what you've heard tonight, grab a tea or coffee, and then about 10 minutes after the end of the service, we're going to meet in the old choir vestry, through the door to your front left, and then turn right. I think that's all I need to say. Thanks so much, Luke.
Thank you very much.